Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending where you're watching this video today. My name is Sergio Santos. I'm here from Georgia, and I am with the Caritas Spiritist Group. I study group here in Georgia, and tonight we're speaking on this little book here. One more lesson, the lesson number 28 about the chapter 29 of the book Initiation into Spiritism by Teresinha Oliveira. It is an amazing chapter. It's very dense, it's very rich. So I'm gonna try to cover on that little 30, 40 minutes that we have. So I'm gonna rush through a little some things. I really recommend that you read it, that you look into it, that you study it, go back to the Genesis that mentions so much and is going such a beautiful way about everything that is in the chapter. I'll highly recommend to read both together so you can understand a little better what the chapter is bringing and everything else about the three revelations. My first thing, like when I saw the chapter, I was like, hey, what are the revelations? What's that means? And I tried to be like really okay. Let's figure out. On Oxford Dictionary, it says the divine or supernatural disclosure to humans of something relating to human existence of the world. Was quite deep, quite interesting. That it's the divine or supernatural revelation. So it's something that has to come from the other side. Let's say this way. And the word itself is to it means they raise the veil of mystery between the realms. So it's quite interesting, and I thought was really, really, really interesting that what that means, revelations, and what is we can get from that knowledge, so we can try to understand what are the three revelations that he's mentioning here. Um, Normally, like what, who brings the revelations? Spirits, divine providence. That is something indispensable for our own progress. It's something that we need to learn so we can progress. So they will inspire us, they will guide us, they'll show us, they'll give a little boost in our intelligence, let's say this way, or maybe some spiritual perception, something like that. But what are divine revelations? The divine revelations are pretty much revelations made by higher order spirits in the name of God and through prophets. Prophets meaning mediums, spokespersons, uh, priests, anybody that has the power of the word and the power to inspire others and to multiply that idea and to spread that idea. It is based on the truth, or otherwise, it will not come from God. Uh, God will not spread lies with us here. Not his point. It's not defense, and it is graded according to the evolution level of the people who will receive it. Are we ready for that revelations? How are we going to receive it? That's all the things that we have to really think about it when we think of divine revelations. And of course, the place and time. Like I can't give a revelation that we, with all the technology that we have and all the knowledge that we have now in our society, 4,000 years ago. Uh, Even in time of Christ, he had to speak in a different way. He had to bring the message in a different way. So it was understood on the time, but they're never not truth. And that's what's really important of the revelations, divine revelation. Now let's think about one more thing that keeps. That's the thing. Lots of things came to me on this chapter. Is really really interesting, and there are a lot of things that made me meditate a lot. So one thing that I kept asking is like, why new revelations? Why are the need of it? Why do we need all those new informations? And why is it? A few topics that I got it that I read on Teresinha's book is like I'm going to read a couple passages just so we have it. Through ignorance or bad faith, humankind may not understand the divine revelation by misrepresenting it or make it improper additions. That's something really to think about it, especially when we start studying. We're going to go through the three important revelations that she mentioned. So we had to think on that on those times as well. Like how humankind is interpreted or made a improper addition to all these revelations, and that's why a new revelation had to come by to, hey, let's go back to their origin. Let's go back to the sense of it, the primordial importance of that revelation. And they serve to remind and confirm the truth previously revealed. So again, like they will not deny something, remind us something, add something to it, or they will explain something to all the revelations that we had already throughout history. And our real spiritual revelations already made to humankind are respectable because of the fundamental truth contained in them. Within the many revelations we got through history, three stands out. And that's all the three revelations that we're going to study, talk a little more tonight. And that's we're gonna get to really, really, really because they are amazing. I hope you are as excited as I am, and I hope you have the book with you because this is one of the best books that I read recently. Okay, let's start with the first revelation that Teresinha touches as just and then she recognized, and we talked here on the book that is talked here on the book. They're like many other resolutions in other religions, in other ways of thinking, in other philosophical ways. There are many, many, many other resolutions. We're studying these three because she thinks, and we think, I agree with her, that it is the three most important recently in history. And the first revelation is the Mosaism, the Mosaic laws. And that's circa 1300 before Christ, 1300 before Christ. And who was Moses? Moses was a Hebrew. He was born in Egypt. He was raised by Egyptian royalty, the Pharaoh's daughter. And he was a medium, a prophet. And that's the prophet Moses. He received spiritual command to remove the Jewish people from Egypt, sorry, and to take them to the promised land. Freedom from slavery, freedom for all the oppression, freedom from the Egyptian ways of thinking and living on that time. Moses is considered the most important prophet in Judaism and one of the most important prophets in Christianity, Islam, the Druze faith, and Baha'i faith, and other Abrahamic religions. According to both the Bible and the Quran, Moses was the leader of the Israelites and lawgiver to whom the authorship of acquisition from heaven of the Torah, the first five books of the Bible, is attributed. Sorry, I read this little part. It's just because there's so many different religions and so many ways that he inspired humanity with all this knowledge, with all his inspiration, and with the revelation that he got. That I did not want to leave any of those out of it, or I really want to touch each one of them so we can see how, wow, so many so different religions nowadays that we see as different has the same base in the same way, and that's the Mosaicism or the Mosaic laws and the Mosaic revelation. That's our first revelation. There's a couple things to touch on the Mosaic uh, revelation because there is the revelation per se, and there are the Mosaic laws. And those are the two different things that we have to really touch and try to understand what's going on, because they are different and they have their purpose, they have their way, but they are different. They have a different way. Let's get to it. I'll read it really fast. Just what's the divine law for Moses? It's the Ten Commandments that we all know, that we love so much, and it's really beautiful. It's very classic, and it's embedded in all religions, in all sorts of faiths, in everything that is to goodness. Number one, do not make images or worship other gods, i.e., nepolytheism or idolatry. Number two, do not pronounce the name of God in vain. Number three, keep the Sabbath day in exempt. Take care of spirit and not only of matter. It is not mandatory that eat on the seventh day of the week. Number four, honor mother and father. Number five, do not kill. Number six, do not commit adultery. Number seven, do not steal. Number eight, do not bear false witness against neighbor. Number nine, do not covet your neighbor's wife. Number 10, do not covet anything that's your neighbor's. So we had to see and think that the Decalogue received through mediumship. So it is a divine revelation, a divine law, and it was in extensive mediumship, and it's so beautiful and so pure. Now we have to talk a little bit of the divine, the civic law from Moses. It concentrated the customs and character of the Jewish people all the time. Um, it was the level of involvement that humankind were on that time and that civilization was on the time, and it was based for it. Um, it's like things like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, the law of talion or retaliation, um, norms. Let me see, norms of or habits of hygiene, food, social organization, and religious rituals. Those are all civic laws, civil laws. So that's very specific to the needs of the population of the time. They needed to organize, control, to improve that society on the time. And he was a master on it. He was amazing on it. But it was a laws made by human being incarnate on Earth with the limit characteristics of the time. Many probably inspired, but it's still not the divine law that came straight from God, straight from the mediumistic experience. One thing about the civil law from Moses that's very important as well is that he uses as God's justice. So God will be punishing, or will be judging, or will be making sure that all the laws that he wrote was going to be fulfilled. So all the laws that he writes on that time, it's for that reason. Like, but it kind of like becomes God becomes a little judgmental, and especially with that sense that it is God almost like a human God, like is putting our characteristics to God, what's a perfect being. So that's why even the Moses, sorry, this keeps falling, uh, announces us a sequence of revelations in the future. Moses himself, and other prophets, announced that the Messiah, or the Christ, the Savior, would come to Jewish family culture and will fulfill what was already have been revealed, and and improve those laws, and to bring more knowledge to humankind. So that was like already a revelation set of revelations. It's like, hey, there'll be more. The spiritual realm won't stop bringing all this knowledge, all this growth, all this beauty to us. So we had to really think about this, and like, hey, even if you go to the primordials, like 13 before Christ, 1300 before Christ. I'm sorry. So that's a longer time. That's 12, 2000, 3000 years, 3200 years and something ago. That's a lot of time ago. So we have to think that, like, even on that time, the spirituality was already like, hey, here's what you had to do. That's what God wants us to do. And like Moses promised, we have the second revelation. The second revelation that Teresinha gets into the study is Christianity. Circa 2022 years ago, to be exact, Jesus brought new teachings as befitted new times. In order to fulfill God's law, Jesus did the following. I'm going to read a little bit on this part, not the whole thing. I have a good study here with me, but I want to read some parts just because there's so many richness and details that do not want to miss out on. If we're all live together in presence, we'll be like reading together and talking and discussing every little topic, and that's what I really love to do. To be sincere, my first like live on computer talk, so it's really interesting for me to change that. I really like to be like interacting and talking. We're gonna get some questions at the end, but like so I'm trying to adapt. I'm so sorry about that. But so let's go to what Jesus brought to us, what he did, and it's about 7 topics that we're gonna talk about it. And the book goes really details. I'll suggest you to read again. He showed the true meaning and corrected distortions. I'm sorry, from Moses' laws. A couple examples. The Sabbath was made for man, not the man for the Sabbath. That's it is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth, because it reveals the inner person. So examples like this is Jesus explaining the Ten Commandments and bringing more the correct interpretation to it. Like we said, the revelations can be misinterpreted and misguided throughout centuries of misuse or more intellectualization in the wrong way. So Jesus came back and said, "No, guys, it's not what Moses meant. Moses meant this." He's not denying anything. He's just saying, "Hey, it's exactly what he said, but that's the real meaning." Number two, develop it further. So he adapting it to the level of moral advancement of its time. Some examples. You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Was turned, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. See the big difference there? That for me was amazing. Like for me, it touched my heart, like my heart reading something like this. It's like we had to stop that negativity. We had to actually start like be proactive in love. We had to be proactive in growth. We had to be proactive in God's laws and being you can hate your enemy or things like you have to love your enemies and love and pray for those who persecute us. How difficult is that, huh, guys? I don't know. I'm still learning. I'm still getting there. Another thing that Jesus did was he informed more fully about future life and the punishment rewards that await humans after death. That's really interesting because when we get to the third revelation, that's going to be very, very interesting how he slowly and patiently spiritually brought that to us. And it's so beautiful that they have no no rush to it. Hey, God is not punishment, but there are consequences for all causes. So we had to really think about that. And a great example is a parable of the rich man of Lazarus. We can read that. I think I'm going to be short on time, so that will be a homework for us to do to read together the parable. If you have questions, I'll try to put on later on, or we talk on the live. It will be amazing. Because I'm looking at my time and I think I'm gonna have to rush a little more. Sorry about that, guys. So number four that Jesus also did is offered a new better idea of God. That's exactly what I was talking on the previous one. Because the God of Moses was wrathful, jealous, vindictive, cruel, merciless, you name it. He wasn't just, if anything. So it was very difficult to not be fearful of God, to not have that fear of God. And stop to thinking on that. That's sad. Like, how would we feel if we fear our Creator? So, like, we really have to think that, and what Jesus brought, the God revealed by Jesus is gracious, sovereign, is just and good, is full of mercy, forgiveness, gives to each one according to their works. He's just, the common father of the human race, which protects and calls everyone to itself, not wishing to be feared but loved. We stop to think, what father or mother want to be feared instead of loved? I don't think anybody. And if it is, we have to really, if we are one of those parents that we prefer to be feared and loved, we should be reflecting on ourselves. I'm not a parent yet, but who knows? We have to really think on that. I don't think I would be like to be hated or feared by my kid or by somebody that I love. Another three more things that I'm summarizing here that Christianity brought to us. He summarized and simplified it. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. That's pretty much the whole Ten Commandments. That's a summarization, but simplification, but does not deny any of the Ten Commandments. It talks about pretty much all of them in a different way, in a positive way. You shall love, you shall learn, you shall um, give yourself as a fool, and you have to love your neighbor as yourself. So we have to love ourselves, and we have to love our neighbor as well. Like, so if we don't love ourselves, how can we love others? And that goes to like a beautiful, beautiful way of us to be really thinking and rethinking the Ten Commandments and going back maybe on the right way, on the right passage to God, on the shorter way maybe than actually going around with all the guidelines and restrictions from the past. So he was very simple, but not at all simple at the same time, if you understand me. Um, and that's the beauty of Christ. Like the other thing that he did that was fantastic is like turning the negative focus into a positive one. Uh, Example, you shall not do evil. That was in the Decalogue from Moses. He transformed, you shall do good. That's a big difference on such a small little words, right? For me, it was really like, hey, that is, we had to stop focus on this negative. We had to actually focus on the positive, on the beauty, on the transformation. So that's another thing that Christ did. And I think the last one, but I think the most important one for me is he exemplified. He did not preach and not do it. He brought the knowledge doing it. He brought the knowledge as an example. He talked about everything that he taught, all the parables, all the teachings that he brought to us. He was exemplified by him. He died for us. He resurrected for us. So spiritual reappearances, everything that he taught, he did. So that was fantastic. That's something that for me that's so rich in Christianity. And again, like to tie the knot to Moses, it adds to it. It reveals a little more. It takes that veil. Remember that we talked in the beginning. It takes a little of that veil, a little more. Like it's not only that, it's more to it. Let's see what it is. Let's think about it, and most of all, let's live it. And that's Christ. We could be talking about him like this 40 minutes only by Christianity. So I'm gonna be forced to jump to the next revelation. That's even whew, it's again is our third revelation that Teresia touches. It is Spiritism that came in 1857. And just to put a little bit of context on Spiritism, it came in France in the 19th century, and France at that time was going through the social organization that was equality, freedom, fraternity. So it had a soil that was really receptive to these ideas of spiritism, these ideas of that we bring to it. Then we're going to talk a little bit about them. So that's what's the beauty of spiritism is again another layer, another revelation. Let's take a little more of the veil out. Another veil. It's probably what 3 billion veils that we had to lift, and we are working slowly with each one of them and changing our lenses and cleansing our thoughts and becoming more and more evolved. So let's talk a little bit about spiritism now. So spiritism, the important things like, well, the initiative was taken by the spirits. It came from them to here. The phone ring from there to here. That old saying, we can't call them in the sense if they call us, they tell us, and they want to talk, and they want to do the phenomena, and they want to do bring the information. On the human side, we have Allan Kardec that codified the teachings, the body of thought and principles which he then denominated Spiritism. So he was the codifier. He got all this knowledge for all these mediums, all these spirits, and organized through the books and make it in a way that was makes sense, that we could study from, that we could learn from, that we could grow from it. Uh, Spiritism's fundamental principles are God, creation, the existence and survival of the spirit, the mediumistic interchange, successive lives, reincarnation, evolution, law of cause and effect, plurality of the inhabit worlds, universal unity, and solidarity. Amazing book for that. If you're new to Spiritism, or if you're just watching this video and never heard of Spiritism before, get this guy. This book will that's the codification of Allan Kardec. He goes question by question, answer by answer by the spirits, comments from him, comments from other spirits. So we had to really like analyze, study, and understand why he was asking those questions, how he was asking it, on the scientific mind that he had, sorry, when he incarnated. So we had to really understand that the Spirit's book, even though it's an initiative that was became from the spiritual realm to us, there's a lot of thought and a lot of inspiration by Allan Kardec on the human side to make it organized, to make it understandable, to make it easy. I don't know, easy that is the correct word, but easier maybe to understand in that sense. There's a lot to read, and every time that I read the Spirit's books, or if I read a question that I haven't read in many times, it comes again that revelation. It's like, hey, I did not think of that when I first read, or a second read, or a third read. So it always comes back with different teachings because I'm probably better to receive that knowledge. And it goes back to that revelation thing of the veils. And that my personal veils, but like you still have the many veils that Spirit has brought. So let's talk a little bit of Spiritism. It does not abolish the divine law as revealed by Moses and Jesus. That's one thing that this has nothing, if anything, amplifies it. Spiritism reminds, explains, completes, and develops it, aligns science and faith. Spiritism took away that blind faith that we have sometimes, and we had many incarnations before. We probably still have here in many specific topics or not, but we all have this tendency to have this uh, blind faith, and that's not okay. Spiritism brings like, hey, it has to be a knowledgeable faith. It has to be something that you actually believe because there is a reason to believe, and it's a faith. It's beautiful that has fundament to it. There's logic to it. There's science to it. Spiritism it is the call to the true principles of God's law and consolation through faith and hope. And the main character of the Spiritist revelation is a comforting truth. That's something so beautiful and something that keeps coming to me over and over and over. That we study and study and study and study and we get to the details of spiritism that's so beautiful and so magical when you start studying the principles of fluids or anything that's very more deep and interesting. And he always has a way, spiritism always has a way to come back to us and say like, hey, but how are you applying this to your heart? How are you making this a betterment for your moral? How is it making this a progress in your life? So it's a comforting truth. It's something that builds in our heart a certainty that we are loved, that we are connected to God, that we are sons and daughters of God, and He is a loving God. So Spiritism keep coming back what Christ back on the day told us. develops more and more with the science of the day and talks about this. And that's the beauty of Spiritism. And that's, I think, that's something that we really have to meditate about in Spiritism, is the power that it has of healing, of growth, of love. That every topic that we can think of, that there are difficulties, we can find an answer if we really look for it and ask for, pray for it. In the Spirit's book, the Gospel, and the codification, we can find deep philosophical thoughts. We can find solutions for dilemmas, moral dilemmas, and so on. It analyzes the passage from Christ in a deeper sense, in a common sense, without that blindness that we had from our past faiths and things like that. So we really have to think on all of those things when we talk about spiritism, when we study spiritism, because it is faith and hope. It is truth. It is a it's comforting. It is about soothing the ailments that we have here on earth. So we really have to think and bring that knowledge when we study anything on spiritism. Any um, there's a little talk from Givaldo when he was in New York one time. He mentioned that he asked Joanna, "Hey, Joanna, what should I do to improve on this lifetime?" And Joanna's like, "Hey, if you read one page and actually apply one page of all the books that you wrote from me, you'll already be progressing a lot." Can you imagine that? Like maybe a very famous book, Happy Life, or something like that, or and you get one of those pages really apply to our hearts, to our minds, and to our souls. Can you imagine how much progress we will do in one life? And then another page in another lifetime. We have infinite ones, so why not? That's the beauty of Spiritism. I'm gonna kind of summarize because I'm a little short on time here. It is another revelation. It's something to bring us back to the track. We had Moses that we went this way, went that way. We kind of went around. We create interpretations and we divided many religions in different details of each religions and things like that. Then we came Christ to bring lift another veil and bring back, okay, all those thoughts in one phrase, in one. So it's beautiful, not to mention the examples and everything else, but like in all the in all and everything that he brought to us. But he summarized and re-guided us to the road to God, to the loving Father. And then comes the Spiritism, 1800 years later, and brings again us to like, hey, don't go on this crazy blind faith. Through science, it's real. You have to believe, not because you have to believe. You have to believe because there is this fundament, there's this proof, there's that proof, there's that proof, there's that proof. And Kardec gave us thousands of proofs of everything with the spirits, not only Kardec, but like all the whole spiritism. So that's what we have to think. Like it's another revelation to bring us to this path to God, to our loving Father, to our loving Mother, as we want to see God. So you have to really think on that, like connect our hearts and feel God here. Feel God with us. Feel our brother Jesus back there. Oh, sorry, this side of the camera. That was a present from Connecticut group that you will travel with me everywhere I go. So our little Jesus. And he's with us everywhere. He's helping us, he's guiding us, he's loving us. So we that's that's the beauty of spiritism. That's the beauty of all these revelations, is to bring more knowledge that we are loved. Imagine that. But I have one more question. No, not a question, but like one more little topic that is. Remember that Moses said that Christ would come, and Christ said that that another revelation will come that became spiritism. Well, spiritism also say there's more to come. I'm gonna read a little text from the book just so we have in our minds. It says like, it is in the progressive nature of spiritism which was not brought as an already complete body of thought with nothing more to add, that the teaching should continue and will still come from the Most High, according to our needs for spiritual advancement, and also that acquired by scientific progress. Therefore, for revelation coming, every day is. If you think about it, Chico wasn't. It was already further from Kardec. Kardec, and then you have Vivaldi. You have mediums that are bringing more knowledges and other body of studies that don't stop. So that would be our fourth revelation. So I think I covered most of the topics of the chapter. Again, let's read it and send me questions. I think I have a couple questions here. Let me just take a look. Just 1 second. Okay, found it. Um, First question that I have here. What I was just talking probably. Uh, can we expect more revelations to come, or have we already received all the knowledge available? As was mentioned, Spiritism is always progressing, like science is. Like we are developing our, let's say, like we have two wings. That little analogy. We have two wings: the knowledge and the moral. More to develop one, more to develop other, and that how it goes. We always evolving. So with that, more knowledge, more scientific knowledge, more moral knowledge. So that meaning more information, more revelations to come in different ways and forms. Let me see. I have, I think, a couple more questions, and the next one is, I found it up. Sorry, I'm not very good with that technology part. Did Spiritism undo or remove any idea brought by Jesus? Reiterating, Spiritism added to it, simplified in the sense to make it easier for us to understand in a more reasonable way God's teachings. Je- that meaning Jesus teaches, because Jesus brought God's teachings. So it's the same teachings of Jesus. It's the same exactly thing. Spiritism is just when you get the gospel according to Spiritism, you get the passage from Christ, and in Spiritism give those maybe a vision that we haven't taught before for some reason. And that the higher order spirit came like, hey, how about this instead of that? You think that way, but does it really make sense? So that's what Spiritism is doing, is bringing more knowledge, more understanding, and more guidance to us with the Christ teachings. So all the revelations, like we talked on the beginning, there's no canceling it, revelations. It's adding to it, explaining a little more. Give, hey, you're not in kindergarten anymore. You're a little advanced, so you can get a little more knowledge on it. You can get a little better explanation on things. Oh, now you're in college, you can get much better understanding on things, and that's how they work. They can't give us a teaching that we won't understand because we are in kindergarten. They're bringing a college. It won't make sense for us or for them. They will lose time, not lose time, but they will be not, it will not, it won't be fruitful. So I have one more question, and I'm getting there on the time. So let me try to get this one. And the last one uh, is the idea of God offered by Jesus different from the one of the Spirit's book? Hmm, no, definitely not. Definitely not. I have the Spirit's book with me, and just reading the first question, I'm gonna read just so we have per exactly as it is here. The question the spirits of the book say, what is God? First question. God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Supreme intelligence, first cause of all things. Going back to that analogy, he's the father and the mother of all things. Us, our brothers and sisters, our enemies, our guardian angels, everyone. It's created by God. It's about love. He's the first cause of all things. So we really had to think that like Spiritism is just developing a little more. Uh, Moses said, "You got the God to fear because it was needed for the civilization, the humankind on the time that we needed to fear so we could respect and actually act on the things. And Jesus came to be like, hey, you don't need to fear because he loves you and he respects you and he created you. So, and then spiritists come and say, like, he is the cause for you. So there's no denying. It's just explaining and adding and getting the veils out from all the revelations. I am out of time. Thank you so much, guys, for this experience. Thank you so much for all the talk, and looking forward to talk to you later. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye bye.